My name is Russ Danner, and I am the Vice President of Products with Crafter Software. And for those of you who haven't heard that much about Crafter Software, it is an award-winning web content and web experience management platform built specifically for Alfresco. We've been named Solution of the Year several years running. We've been named Trend-Setting Product by CamWorld and most recently by e-Content magazine. And so we're really focused on building very engaging, very dynamic personal experiences. And our product is 100% open source. So we make our money selling support, and all the code is in the community. And this is just a partial list of some customers to give you a sense of who's using the product. Not so much just about the brands, but think about the verticals here. There's no specific vertical. I think that's the key takeaway. There's people in finance, people in hospitality, people doing e-commerce, and so on. And every one of these projects is something significant. It's not just a landing page, for example. And the other thing is that each one of these brands has either multiple sites, or they have a lot of content, or they have a lot of integration. There's factors that make this the right kind of platform. And it's the same kind of factors that make Alfresco the right kind of platform for your organization. So now we've talked a little bit about our customers. I'm just going to basically roll into a discussion about web experience management and where that's going. So I'm going to give you kind of an introduction to that, where that's headed. We'll talk about 5 things that web experience management really needs to have and 7 things that differentiate the sheep from the goats, as I like to say. And then we'll do a little demo and then take some questions. So that's kind of it. So speaking about customers, today it really is all about the customers. And we have a different kind of customer today. And when I say customer, I mean your customers, not necessarily you as our customers. But we have a different kind of customer. And that's somebody who has access to a lot of information. And so they make decisions differently now than they used to, right? They look at total value versus just price. It used to be that you only had price, so you had to make decisions based on price. But now you can really understand what kind of value you're getting. You're looking for a more active role in the purchasing process, a more meaningful experience. You want to be more engaging. And so the customer is just very different. Customers also have more choices today than they ever did before. It's a global market. People are buying things online. So if they're not served well, they can easily go somewhere else. As a result of that, customers are just much harder to attract, right? Because there's so many more people out there vying for their attention. And they're more difficult to keep because they're more finicky. And then to make things a little bit more difficult, we can see that there's just a real fragmentation of the user experience, right? It used to be that you either had a brick and mortar store, and then maybe at some point you got an e-commerce presence. But now, in the last 5 to 8 years, we've just seen an explosion of, okay, but now you also need social media. You also need an iPhone application and an Android application. And what about these watches? And what about these glasses? And so on and so on and so on. So there's all kinds of new ways to interact with your customers. And this creates for them a value, but also a confusion. So it's important that you start thinking about, if you're going to serve the customers well and you're going to keep them, how do you keep them? You give them a great experience. And you do that by trying to give them something consistent and seamless across all of these channels. And this is just an example here of a company that's mapped out all of their touch points with a customer. And this is called a customer journey. And it's not important that you can see this diagram, only that it exists. And it happens to be for an airline. And they're just looking at, okay, where do customers touch us? What data is generated? What's their experience? How does that data flow into the next experience? And how do we drive the next and the next and the next experience so that it's consistent and good, and then the customer stays with us? And so an example of this, I think, is that a company that does this pretty well is JetBlue. And the example I always show is their homepage for the mobile app and also for the traditional web page, right? So it's pretty good. It shows that they're really interested in serving the customers. In the top of the homepage here, you see that they've got the traditional buy a ticket, right? And then there's some marketing material. But if you go to the mobile app, there's none of that. Right? There's no time for that. The idea here is it's not just about the room. There's no time. If you're on a mobile device, you probably just want to know, when's my flight? I want to book a flight. I want to get travel alerts, and so on. So this experience is completely different. It's completely user-focused, and it's actionable. versus maybe when you're at your desktop, you have more time, you can browse around, and maybe you can see, you have time to see, okay, there's a great flight to Fort Lauderdale for $395. I don't think that's a very good deal, but in this case, but yeah, there's one for 59, so this, you can find a good deal. And this is so important here that it's actually measurable. So Forrester did a study where they basically took all these companies that were publicly traded, and they said, great, we're going to put them all in an index, and we're going to look at whether they focus on customer experience or they don't. And they, the people that don't are laggards, and the people that do are leaders. And you can see that leaders, and this is stock price here that you see, leaders are really outperforming the laggards. And the control here is the S&P 500. So on average, that particular index stock price rose 14.5% between 2007 and 2013. But those who focused on customer experience saw a jump to by 43% on average. So that's a huge indicator that this matters. And so as a result, you see a lot of the analysts basically saying customer experience is going to be the top priority of the C-suite. And that's Forrester, it's Gartner, it's basically everybody. So we think the best way to do that, to be successful at that, is to focus on what I would call the 3 C's: to be consistent in your experience, to be contextual to the person that you're selling to, and to be conversational so that you basically have an engaging experience. And there's 5 pillars in web experience management that can help you with that. So we're going to go through these really quick. Hopefully I'm doing all right on time. So the first is easy to use web content management. And when I think about what it means to be easy to use, I first have to think about who is the user. So this is the way that I break down, and that we at Crafter break down the web teams. So at the top, the broadest base of users is generally what we would call the content team. And these are publishers, they're editors, and authors, and they need a really non-technical set of tools, and they're the people that are in the CMS the most. Below that, you have specialists, people that are designers. They are technical in the sense that they use a specific set of tools like Dreamweaver or Photoshop, but they're not geeks, so to speak. And then you have web ninjas. This is a role that most CMSs don't account for, right? It's a role that is somebody who's involved in a daily operation, who knows how to code a little bit, and can do JavaScript, CSS, maybe some lightweight scripting, and can actually build functionality in the CMS and push it out. So that's a web ninja. Most organizations, as soon as they get here or here, they have to go to the development team. And then the delivery cycles change a lot. So this, for here we're looking at hours or days. Here you're looking at days, well, mostly weeks to months to, So, and then I've got this big line here in this chart. And that's basically the line where, in my opinion, you should not be involved in the operational aspects of the site. Developers who are doing heavy integrations with back-end services, who are doing heavy content modeling and so on, and heavy coding, should be involved in the system as a project. Maybe you're building a whole new site, you're building out whole new services, then you want the developers involved. And system admins, and a lot of times we find that system admins are involved in publishing. They really should only be there to make sure the dial tone is on, that the systems are upgraded, that the hardware is working, that it's monitored properly, and so on. So now, what makes it easy for authors? The first thing that makes it easy for authors is to be able to see what they're creating. So we call this in-context preview, the ability to see what you're going to publish in the context, either a traditional web page or a smartphone or a social site, whatever it is, you want to see that in context before you publish it. You also want to make sure the tools don't require you to code, and you need to be able to edit also in context. So in your styles, just WYSIWYG type editing. And that doesn't mean that the CMS can just go out and get a rich text editor and throw it into the CMS. It means it needs to have your style sheets in it. It needs to really facilitate that editing. You should also have features like drag and drop, right? Because you want to build out pieces of functionality, and you want authors to be able to place that functionality on the site. Now, I'm not going to be able to take you through a whole other set of slides that say Crafter can do all this, so I want you to know in your head as we talk about these things, Crafter can do these things. So for the specialists, if you've ever talked to a specialist and you've said, great, we've got this new CMS, we want you to start using it. maybe the first day they will patronize you and use the CMS, but eventually they're going to tell you, look, I'm just going to build the HTML over here, and I'm going to build the images over here, and then I'm going to give them to your web team, and you're going to integrate them, because I can't use that tool. I have Photoshop. I have Dreamweaver. It's great. And that tool is not Photoshop. And a web tool is not going to be Photoshop, and we shouldn't expect it to be. And so what you want to be able to do is actually integrate that Photoshop with the CMS. Okay? And you know, as attendees of the Alfresco summit here, that Alfresco has great integration with desktop tools. And we get that as a benefit of sitting on top of Alfresco. So what about those web ninjas? What makes it good for them? The first thing would be the ability to use any framework they want on the front end, right? There's a million frameworks, and if you just say, okay, well, we're going to do HTML5, and what library should we use? There's Dojo, and there's Angular, and there's Ember, and there's Handlebars, and there's a million frameworks, and different frameworks are good for different purposes. So to say that the CMS prefers this framework or that framework is a mistake, and a lot of CMSs will force you down one road or the other. And so you want to give the site and the experiences the freedom to use whatever framework they want. We also, as web ninjas, want to be able to create content with different presentations, and that means the same content should be able to go through different templates. And those templates should be managed in the system. And this is my favorite capability, which is lightweight scripting and getting rid of Vlad the deployer. And I really think that picture is really accurate. And so, getting new code out to a live environment is one of the heaviest parts of actually delivering new functionality. And scripting technologies, where you can actually write something in the environment, test it in the environment, push it out. If it doesn't, if something's not right, you can bring it back. That ability is amazing and can really make you responsive to your business demands. And so I say, let's kill Vlad the deployer. What about system operators and devs? For now, we'll kind of leave that off the table. But they need modern tools, but they shouldn't be in the CMS on a regular basis. And if they are in your environment, you should call us and we will fix it for you. Okay, number 2 pillar is multi-channel. And I've got a lot of channels up here. And you should think of an on-premise brick and mortar store as a channel. You should think of opportunities to augment that experience with digital touch points. But there are other channels like Facebook and email and kiosks and so on, and tablets. But a lot of times when we think of multi-channel, people immediately go to mobile. Oh, it's all about mobile. Mobile is not the only channel, but it is important right now. It's the fastest growing channel. This is a great report, the KPCB report. You should check it out. It really just shows how fast mobile is growing and how important it is for you to take that on. My key thing for you to understand is that mobile is not about the screen size. It's not just about having a responsive design. It's much more about creating a contextualized experience for your users. And this is Marriott Hotels. This is one of our customers. And they have these large displays in most of their hotels where you can find out what's the weather, what activities are going on around here, what news do I need to know. And it's interactive, and it provides a lot of value. And that's a great example of a digital experience that's adding value to a physical space. And it's very contextual. So just to re-say that again, follow this JetBlue model, be contextual, serve the user, don't serve yourself, don't put marketing before your users. Another one is to really take advantage of the ways that these channels can change how you work and how you interact with customers. I think the Apple Store is a great example of this. You go into the Apple Store, they have mobile devices, they have your customer history, they know how much, they have the inventory of the store, they have information on the products, and there's no lines in the store, right? Anybody can check you out. The only line is the one waiting to get into the store, those crazy people that have been waiting outside to buy an iPhone 6. And I just ran into some of them the other day at Best Buy. Nuts. And then with multi-channel, the other thing with the CMS is it's important for you to have the ability to adapt. New channels come out every day. The people that jump on that channel first are the leaders in that channel. If you look at Twitter today, the people who are ruling the Twitter space or the Twitter sphere are the people that got there first. And so you want to be able to get there first. And if you have to wait for the CMS to release a new version so that you can get into that new space, you're going to be sunk because CMSs release new versions. Real new versions, probably once a year or less. And another key thing is you want a CMS that can publish, right? So a lot of people think, oh, what is publishing? Publishing is I check the box in a workflow, it's approved, and now it's live, and therefore I have published. But that's not really what we mean by publishing. We mean being able to push that content to some other place, whether that's your site or it's social media. So you want to be able to push and pull experiences. Pillar number 3 is personalization. Personalization is all about standing out in that global market. It's about gaining attention and maintaining the attention of your customers and providing them with real value by speaking to them in some, with content and functionality that's immediately relevant to them. And so it's all about getting the right content to the right person in the right place at the right time. An example that I would show for this is really big. This is a movie from when I was a kid. I don't know how many people know this reference, but this guy, I don't have time to explain it, but he's able to make and sell toys to kids better than anybody else because he thinks like a kid. Pillar number 4 is engagement. Engagement is all about things like user-generated content. It's about recognizing that the web is much less anonymous today. It's much more social. People want to connect. They want to share their opinions. They want to be heard. And so you need to give the customers the ability to be heard. I also like activity streams. Activity streams are great because they let people see what their networks are doing, and they can feel pressured into doing those things too, or they can pressure their friends into doing those things. So I think this is just a kind of a great thing. Keeps you up to date and gives you motivation. And of course, that relies on these relationship graphs. So a CMS at this point, needs to be able to maintain graphs of relationships. Who do you know, and how do you know them? And then give you the ability to share. And the 5th pillar is integration, okay? And integration is a big topic, depending on who you are. You're going to need to integrate with back-end systems that are billing systems and procurement systems and so on. When I'm thinking about integration here in this talk, I'm going to talk about marketing integration, just to talk about what's possible in the marketing space and how much integration there is. This box here that's blown up that has Crafter in it and Adobe and some other platforms, that's just this box right here. Everything else up here is all the things that marketers want to do and integrate with. And so it's a huge space. And some companies actually, their model here is to go out and buy a company in every one of these spaces. And it's called the suite-based model. I thought I'd just comment on what I think that's all about. And I think it's a lot like this. If you were to just buy every one of those products and say we have it, it's a lot like this pocket knife, right? You get all of these tools. You pay for all of these tools. And they have one branding, one packaging. But they're not the best tool. They're just the tool that the company could buy. And they're not necessarily integrated beyond that packaging and that marketing. So I think suites on the surface sound good, but you got to dig in much, much deeper and understand, okay, what's the relationship of these tools between each other. We think a better approach is a best-of-breed approach where you can actually continue to use platforms that you're probably already using, like Salesforce and Alfresco and Marketo and Omniture and Optimizely and so on. Keep using these things. Your teams have all been trained in them, but somehow bring them into the CMS in a way that gives the CMS more of a cockpit-like feel. And the example I would use is Google Analytics. We have an integration there where you can configure reports from Google Analytics or Omniture or other analytics platforms, but you're only giving the team the reports they need to do their job. And so you don't have to pass out accounts. You don't have to train them in a tool. You just say, here are the reports that matter to you. So most CMSs are going to say they can do these things. And so I want to give you some ideas about how we can separate the sheep from the goats. And there's 7 characteristics that I think make a platform good. So first is multi-site. I don't know any medium or large size organization that doesn't have more than one website. Okay, most companies have hundreds of websites. It's certainly the case for Hershey's. I know they're actually a community user of ours, and they're running many sites on Crafter. And it's just that, they have a site for every brand and so on. So that's probably not unlike you. The challenge here is that if you have a platform that requires you to put up new infrastructure for every site, you're creating a new silo for every site. And you can't share that content, you can't share those processes, and it's just more and more infrastructure for you to manage. And then we can take that silo concept and we can bring it up a level or push it down a level, however you want to look at it, and talk about what does that mean to the enterprise. In other words, how siloed is your content strategy in your enterprise? Where do you manage your records? Where do you manage your documents? How do you manage your collaboration and your digital assets? And a lot of companies just have 1,000 silos for all that stuff. We did a project with Harvard Business Publishing many years ago, and at this point, and they had over 20 different repositories they were keeping content in. I think maybe even just 20 shared drives and then repositories. But a much more strategic approach is what Alfresco provides, right? It's one single modern platform, a technology platform that provides digital asset management, document management, records management, collaboration, and then with Crafter, the idea that you can manage your web content and publish it. Okay, so that's important. The third thing here is hosting options. So a lot of CMSs, maybe they can only do on-premise or they only do cloud. We actually have analysis that can show you a lot of these. If you take these different factors and you can actually use that to kind of measure CMSs up, we can share that with you later if you're interested. But basically, hosting, you've got a lot of different options, and you want to make sure that at least the ones that are important to you are available. So on-premise, you're managing the infrastructure and the software. Or managed service, this is what some people call cloud, but it's actually not cloud. It's a private cloud where you don't manage the infrastructure, the physical boxes, but you manage the software on those boxes. So that's kind of like outsourcing the physical IT space. Then there's SaaS, true cloud offerings, where you don't manage anything. You give a paycheck, or you give a check, and you get functionality. And then the third category is hybrid, and hybrid is this overloaded terminology, and depends on who you ask. In the Alfresco space, it means the ability to have a cloud capability, a cloud environment where users can work, and an on-premise environment where users can work, and those two environments are synced together, and the permissions on-premise and the workflows on-premise can seamlessly flow back and forth between the cloud. And they have a 20-60-20 rule that says 20% always belongs in the cloud, 20% always belongs on-premise, and 60% can flow. And that maybe applies a little bit more to documents. The percentages may vary in web content. But this turns out to be an enormously valuable architecture in the web space, because there's a lot of organizations that have stringers, what we call like stringers, which are authors or people that are working in the field that write content but shouldn't necessarily have access to your environment, or people work with digital agencies and they don't want to teach them how to use their CMS. And so what you can do is you can actually give them an account in the cloud, and you can create folders in your on-premise installation, and you can give them permissions to those folders, and those folders can have workflows on them, and they can drop off images, they can drop off videos, they can drop off articles, and those things can go through workflow and then be pushed out to the site. And they never had to have access to your firewall, they never had to learn your tools, they never had to learn your specific processes. It's just a really, really powerful platform, and it's the only WEM in the world that has that. The fourth here is openness. A lot of people think openness just means open source, and that's not true. There's a couple different facets of open. One is open content. So how easy is it to get content in and out of your repository, right? Another facet is open architecture. So how pluggable are you? Can I use just authoring? Can I use just delivery? Can I easily plug in analytics? So you want an open architecture. And then you want, of course, access to the code. I've done development for a long part of my life. That's not what I'm doing right now, but it always helped to have the code. And so it's not necessarily that you're going to recompile the system yourself, but you might want to just see what's going on in there. And that makes integration much, much easier. And it also means that open source means that you will not be locked into the vendor. So for example, if Crafter doesn't provide you with good support, you keep using the software, you can tell Crafter to go work for somebody else. And the software's still yours. The fifth thing here is the right technology. So what's the right technology in the web, right? There's lots of different camps here, PHP, Ruby on Rails, .NET. And the way that I think about it is, look, in the enterprise space, you've got .NET and you've got Java. If you're trying to build something really interesting with PHP, as soon as you get to something like faceted search, or you're going to crunch some big data, you're going to turn to the Java space anyway. Drupal and WordPress are all using Solr for search. So then your IT team is actually running Java and PHP, which is just kind of silly. So Java provides the best integration. .NET is also a very powerful platform, but it locks you into a Microsoft stack. So we think Java is the right technology. And we think a decoupled architecture where authoring is separate from delivery is the right approach. And the reason for that is when you separate authoring from delivery, it means that you can scale these environments differently, right? Your delivery environment probably has a much higher SLA. It's going to take a lot more of a pounding. It's got a lot more users and needs to be maybe bigger scale. The authoring environment, maybe you have 100 authors in there, or 25 authors, whatever, but it's much smaller. Sorry, that's grainy. I'm sorry about that. Another thing that you think about here is that typically authoring is inside the firewall, delivery is outside the firewall. So there are different security models here. And by separating them, you can easily have that different security model. And then the biggest thing, I think, is that that ability to publish. Once you decouple, you have to publish. And once you can publish to one, you can publish to any. And so that publishing is critical, as we talked about. You want to be able to push content. And the last thing here is performance. You need a platform that can perform. Look, it used to be that you just go out and you buy a CDN, right? Fine. Doesn't matter how dog slow your system is, put a CDN in front of it, and everybody's happy. But the thing is now we're personalizing every experience for every user. And so if we're going to do that, we can cache some things. We still are going to push a lot of things to the edge. CDN is still relevant. But the base pages and things have to come through us. And that means that that technology has to scale out at a footprint that is manageable. We can't have 200 servers to run the site. So, and this costs money. So, and a slow-performing site costs money. There's some great statistics here. A 1 second delay in page load time is a 7% loss in conversions, 11% fewer page views, and a 16% decrease in customer satisfaction. And I like the way that this goes on to put that in terms of dollars. It says if your site were to make $100,000 a day, you could lose up to $2.5 million a year in sales. So that would more than justify any rethink of your CMS platform if you've got a slow platform. And it's just a huge opportunity to bring some budget back into your organization. Okay. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about Alfresco, and then we're going to do our, or some more technology, and then we're going to do our demo quick. So Crafter, I mentioned we use modern technologies. I just want to put these up here for you. We use Alfresco as our document store. We store all the content in Alfresco as XML. And all of our data stores are document-oriented, which means there's no schema. We can add new fields on the fly. So we store profiles in MongoDB. We index content in Solr. And so we can easily add new fields. It makes it very developer-friendly. And those technologies are horizontally scalable, so we can really build large and fast sites. We're based on a Spring and Java foundation, which means that these are, from a developer perspective, if you're going to build today an application, you're going to build with Spring in Java. Otherwise, I think you're crazy. And then we let scripting happen in FreeMarker and Groovy, so you actually have a platform that you can write code on and not have to deploy a new WAR file. You can just script things and push it out right from the CMS. Front end, this is just some examples. People have built stuff with jQuery. They've built stuff with Angular, Backbone, Bootstrap. So those are just some examples of platforms. The platform has that clean separation of concerns, so authoring on one side, delivery on the other, delivery of multiple channels. And it is a decoupled platform. And you can see that Alfresco lives only on the authoring side under our, so if you take these two platforms, or these two sides, on the left-hand side here for you, there's authors working Crafter Studio. Crafter Studio sits on top of Alfresco. All the content then gets stored in Alfresco as XML. It's put through workflow, and then we publish it to one or more channels. Could be Crafter Engine or High Performance Delivery Engine. That can, when I say high performance, we can do 1 million to 5 million dynamic renderings per hour on that per CPU. It could be to a mobile application. It could be to a LifeRate portal, social networks. It doesn't matter. How do we use Alfresco? There's some very basic ways we use Alfresco. This is maybe derogatory in the Alfresco setting, but I like to say we use Alfresco as a bit bucket. We store files in Alfresco. And so we store content as XML or as images or PDFs and so on. We use Alfresco's security model. It has a tremendous security model. We use it for versioning and for coordination so we don't step on each other's toes, locking, check in and check out the library card there, and then versioning, right? And versioning in the web space is a little bit more complex than versioning a document. So we've got a model that can take care of that for you. And I don't have time to get into it. We leverage Alfresco for its rules execution. I remember in 2005, this is probably the thing that excited me the most about Alfresco when it first came out. And its ability to take any folder and say when content comes in here or when it leaves or when it's updated, I'm going to fire off a workflow or take an action. This can be hugely important to your integration. We use it for metadata extraction. So as images and documents come into the system, we can pull metadata out and make those searchable and findable. We use the platform for document and image transformation. So you can drop off a high-res image of a product, and we can make different renditions of that image for you and then serve those through different channels. We use it for file drive access. So if you want to use Photoshop, we can use Photoshop because we can be a file drive or a CMS drive. And we can easily build APIs to your content through Alfresco, through the web scripts platform, if there's something that CMS doesn't handle. So overall, I think this is a very enterprise-friendly architecture. And with that, I just want to show you a 13-minute, it's a 13-minute demo. Is there any questions so far, or just you guys want to see the demo? All right, looks like demo time. Okay. So I'm just going to, because of time, I recorded this. That way I don't have to worry whether I'm going to run over. And so what we'll do is I'm going to play this. Let's do view full screen here. And go ahead and play. So this is Crafter Studio. And this is on the left-hand side of the diagram for you. I'm going to log in here as an admin user. And so you can see the Crafter Studio plugs into Alfresco Share. And it's all the same as you're used to, except we have a My Websites over here in the upper left-hand corner. And you can manage as many sites as you want on the platform. You can create new sites based on a blueprint. So you can create templates of site types, right? And then you can spin up new sites based on those templates very quickly. And so we have some sites already, and it would take a long time. So I'm just going to click on a site here. This is going to be a retail site example. So I'll click on Rosie's Rivets. And you can see when I click on it, I can be configured to be taken right to the home page for this site. And what I have is I can see my page, and I have my authoring tools. And I can turn on advanced tools here, a little palette. And I can see things like in-context editing, page components, targeting, and so on. If I open those up, maybe there's more features that I can get access to. Okay. All right. So now the other thing here is that this environment that we're looking at, it's a safe sandbox. So I can make edits here, and I can browse around in here like it's the live site, but anything I do here isn't going to take effect until I put it through workflow, I approve it, and I publish it. And the sandbox is fully functional. So for example, if I've got a product page or something and I want to use the filters and see how that's going, I can easily filter it down to the black item. So I can actually add content and then interact with it and see that things work. Okay. So here we're just showing some features of Solar, faceted navigation or category search where you can filter things. And Solar understands data types and so on. You can also see I think next thing we're going to look at here is channel. Yep, so we can go into the channel here. I can select iPhone or iPad or another channel. And then I can see that same content on a different device right inside the tool. So as an author, I don't need to have like 16 devices on my desktop. That would get a little bit hard. And Crafter can actually do responsive and adaptive design. So it can see, of course, we can do front-end, hide, show, shrink, or grow. But we can also detect the type of device that's coming in and serve a completely different template to the user, which is hugely powerful. It can make your site a lot faster, and it can deliver a much more contextual experience. Editing's really easy. Go to an article, open up in-context editing, click on the, turn the pencils on here, and you see there's pencils over different regions. And then you can just click on that pencil that you want to edit. I guess I'm going to prove here that I can turn these on and off. And then you click on that pencil. Come on. And then you get the editing box here. Whoever recorded this demo is a fidgety person. I don't know. All right, so let's maybe do some editing here. Insert like a sub-headline. So we'll put some text in. And style that. And you want to be using your style sheet. And you want the markup to be semantic. So I can say subheading here, and that's a semantic markup. Maybe I can insert an image. Here you see common images versus desktop images. You can actually insert your own data sources. So if you have a digital asset management system, we can pull images from there. In this case, I'm picking an image off a desktop. I upload it into the system. It brings it in. In the background, Alfresco can actually create renditions for me. I can double-click on this image here and style it. So maybe send this over to the right. And we'll put some padding on it. Okay, a little padding on the bottom there. It looks very beautiful. We're going to have alt text. We're a good website here, so we'll say fall in love with our jeans. Okay, and click out. And once we're done there, if we want to make another edit, we just double-click on it again. So the point is that it's easy, right? You don't have to be a master of HTML to do this stuff. And then here, maybe we'll make an edit here, inner style. So this is actually a block quote tag. The style sheet, your style sheet is actually applied here. So if you update the style sheet, in most cases, we can actually update all the rich text editor experiences right away. Once we're done, we save that, and boom, we see that on the screen. Other authors can interact with that, and it's easy. Another thing here is just drag and drop. So we saw a little bit of that in the slides. Show you how that works here. We can go into page components, get a list of predefined widgets. You define for your site the widgets that are available to your authors, and you define layouts where they can put those widgets. And so if they want to put a new piece of functionality in a place where they want to move an existing piece of functionality, they can just do that. Just drag and drop these things around. If they want to add something new, let's say like what are we going to add here? Grab something. Okay. We're going with a map. Okay. So we're going to add a map here. And in this case, this widget just needs an address. So the form comes up. You're just going to fill out an address. And it's going to be San Francisco. It's appropriate. And we're going to save and close. And we'll just get a map, right? So this is just a component that has a simple data model and a simple template that renders a map. Now, there are more interesting examples. For example, so let's go into publishing here. Maybe we'll get rid of some of these components. So we're going to targeting here. You see, I've got an active persona is anonymous. And I can choose different personas, so I'm going to choose one of these. So here we've got a persona for a regular shopper, young male, southern US. And that shopper has properties, and these properties are arbitrary. You configure whatever you want, but they have an effect on the environment. So now that I assume this persona, I can see I'm acting as that user here. And now any functionality that's targeted in the environment is going to actually take effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get rid of this map here and move this component over. And now we're going to add the nearest store. And basically, because this person is from Florida, we want to see that the nearest store is somewhere close to Florida. That would be good. And so we're going to add that. And this component just wants to know how many stores do you want me to display. So we'll just say 1. And again, the properties depend on what widgets you make. And here, so the closest store to you is Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Now, as an author, I want to test to make sure that works. So what would I do? I would go into targeting. And I might choose a different persona. So here's Southern US. And I would say, OK, well, what other personas do I have? Well, I have maybe Northeast fall season. So OK, let's assume that Northeast US shopper. We go ahead and assume it. And now what do we see? We see Boston, Massachusetts as the nearest store. So the content can be tagged with a location. And then we can, based on a radius or a geometry, we can find content that's geofenced to that space. And the tools make it easy for authors to add that and then to quickly test across different scenarios and different channels. OK. So see here. Just keep going. We're getting close to the end here. All right, so now I'm going to show editing content with a rich tool. So I'm going to edit this image up here. So if you've ever seen a demo with me, I'm always editing this image. This thing's got, in my repository, it's probably got about 4 trillion versions. And so, okay, so I've blown the image up so we can see it. I'm going to go into Colorize tool. This is GIMP. This is like Photoshop for people who either don't know Photoshop or can't afford it, or only make one edit to one file. And so I'm going to just change this to a kind of a coppery look and feel. So I'm using this rich desktop tool and getting that image to look the way I want. And when I'm done, I say OK. And then I got to export it. Now, when I export it, you're going to see how this all works. So we're going to say export. And you see here, we're mounted on top of WebDAV, Web Project. So we're actually mounted on top of the Alfresco repository. And anything that I have permission to in the repo, I can get access to. So I export it. And now if I go back to my page here and I just refresh, boom, I see it right there in the environment. So now there's no excuse. You know, you can use Dreamweaver, you can use Photoshop, but we're going to version what you do, and we're going to audit what you do, and we're not going to have to integrate what you do. And we'll be a real team. Let's see how this is. It's got a couple. We've got 4 more minutes. We're actually a little bit out of time. It's just going to show a little bit more targeting. If there is a question, is there any questions, or you just want to keep seeing? Okay. So here, what I do is I switch to this user, but you see that this experience is not targeted. It's very generic. It's generic messaging. It's unisex content. And if we look at this set of panels, it's all controlled by this component we created for this site called the homepage scenario. So we want people to create different scenarios, and then we want to serve those different scenarios to different people. And if we scroll down through all the collateral, at the bottom we have targeting criteria on those scenarios. So I could have 1,000 scenarios in the environment. I want the environment to find the right one. In this case, it's default, so it's all genders, all seasons. So if I can't find something better, I'm going to get this stuff. Well, let's go and make some content that's better. So we can go into the environment here. All right, what are we doing? OK, so it's reaffirming. It's female and fall for you, so you can see that that's that. OK, let's close that up. Now let's go edit some content. So we staged some content in here, but we didn't tag it appropriately. So in components, in homepage scenarios, we've got a scenario called female, young, US Northeast fall season. So I right-click on that. I edit it. And inside that content, let's go. We've got collateral that's more geared towards women in the fall. It looks all Northeast to me. I lived in Boston for 12 years, I should know. And as we scroll down past all those cool leaves and things, at the bottom, there's targeting criteria, and there's gender, and it's been tagged for females, but there's no tag for season. So the system is just kind of excluding it because, in this case, season is important. So we're going to click fall, say save, and immediately, because we are this persona, we see this experience, right? And we can test that rule. So here, what we can do is go into targeting. Nope. You're going to show publishing channel. OK, no, sorry. So OK, I don't know my own demo. So I'm going to assume this anonymous persona and see that the targeting rule works, and that's the idea. So as I flip back and forth as an author, I can see that. Now let's go into publishing channel, right? And here you can see, because I've assumed this user, I can see that experience for that user. And then at this point, I could say this looks great. Let's publish it. Something else I might want to do is say, OK, this scenario looks good, but we're actually running some experiments on the site. So we want to know if red buttons are more effective than blue buttons. How would we do that, right? So we can actually create different variations of the same experience. And we have a panel where the authors can see the different experiments that are on the site, in this case, red versus blue buttons, versus sorting of the catalog. Does it make a difference if I sort the catalog by arrival date or prices? So I can choose like a blue variation and see it right inside the environment. And this is integrated with Optimizely and Google Analytics and some others. And then I can check on publishing channel. Now this is kind of neat. Here you see content that is targeted to the person, it's targeted to the device, and it's targeted to a specific cohort or group of people. And we got some people just sort of standing outside here, so we wrap up. And there's just 46 seconds on here, so we show a little bit of workflow. So if we wanted to make that live, click Go Live, You can choose a date and time you want to push content out. You can choose the environment you want to push to, and that's it. And if there's a workflow approval, it goes into that. If not, it would go live. So that's the demo. I appreciate your time. Is there any questions? Okay, well, thank you.